Sovereign Nation, what's happening? I kind of look like the Batman character, Two-Face here. Between the lighting and audio issues, I don't know. I'll figure it out one day. I move in 3 weeks, so I'll be able to actually set stuff up in a way that will work. So stay tuned. On whatever episode this is of Sovereign Health, we're gonna get into all nonsense. Do you want to kick it off? Because I just had a mind blank.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about
Fundamentals.
fundamentals, the basics. And like I'm gonna kick this off with a little story, some story time here, because
Yes.
this is something that just you never get away from it, and you shouldn't. A couple years ago, I had an athlete account on Instagram, and I was posting up a lot of my arm balances and handstand presses and all that kind of stuff. And I would get a lot of messages from people asking me, Joshua, how do I get my press? And always my go-to every single time was, what do your push-ups look like? And 90% of the time, those conversations died after that question, because there was no recognition in the work that needed to happen. People assumed that there was like some set of drills that you could just practice to get there, not willing to take the time to actually develop the strength that they needed in order to arrive there. And that's essentially where my question was trying to lead them to was, hey, this isn't just let me wake up one day, put my hands on the floor, and then just press up into a handstand. This is years worth of work arriving at a point where my body is strong enough and supple enough to be able to execute something as challenging as a handstand press.
Mm.
And it was fun always watching that happen. It's like here's another one. Here we go again. And it does get old. It gets really old. Dealing with that sort of ignorance, because people want everything right now and they want to do like the crazy things to arrive at that point right now, and you don't get to do the hard stuff. You don't get to build the skyscraper if you don't lay down your foundation first. And even once you built the skyscraper, you still have to maintain that foundation.
Totally, yeah. I think that's pretty common in any discipline. Like even with animal flow, people will see me doing like levitating kick throughs and stuff like that, which is basically you're coming up to a tuck balance before coming back down and transitioning into the next move. And a tuck balance is basically a half a handstand. And people want to do like all of these more progressed moves, yet they still haven't really worked on how to do a proper side kick through or how to do a proper front step through before doing a front kick through. And gets interesting, gets challenging. But even as a coach, like we're not impervious to it either. I noticed on one of my videos the other week when I was doing a jumping side kick through transition, that as I was hitting the middle of my transition, my knees were coming up to my chest. And in animal flow, I'm in a beast, like in any sort of variation of a beast position, your knees are supposed to be 1 inch from the ground. That's it. No higher than that. Like just high enough to slide a piece of paper. And if we're not like, it's one thing, like it's hard to practice in front of a mirror, to be dialing that in constantly, because you can injure yourself depending on the angle and crank your neck or crank your spine or whatever the wrong way. But watching yourself on camera is, I would say, is even more powerful, because you can actually see yourself going through, and it's like, oh man, I'm always calling my clients out on this, and now I'm doing it.
Video is a very, very powerful thing. And it's one thing that I'm always recommending to my own students and clients, like record yourself. And I don't know why, but I get a lot of resistance against that.
Oh,
like a
I
lot
hate
of
it.
resistance.
It's so awkward. It like I hate like listening to myself and watching myself. Like it just creeps me out to hear my own voice when I'm not talking and like see myself on video or whatever. I'm like, I can't do it. So I
Well,
get it.
you sit with it long enough and it kind of that eventually becomes like a no issue, a non-issue, right? But
Yeah.
like initially, so I'll take a time out, right? We'll come back to this because this is kind of it's a relevant uh, tangent.
Yeah.
Years ago, years and years ago, decades ago, literally, I was in a band. I was the front man for a rock band, and we played shows and everything. And I never really heard what I sounded like. We would just always like everything was live. And then one day we decided that we are gonna buckle down. We are gonna start working on recording an album. And that first day was like a slap in the face because I'm sitting here listening to my recorded voice and I'm like, that sounds terrible. Why do people come to our shows? Like, like, and like, but that was in my brain, and that was where I was at in my head hearing it. But I couldn't get away from that. We're still doing the band thing, we're still playing out. And eventually I just got used to hearing myself to the point where, you know, years later, I'm very comfortable standing in front of a camera and talking things out, whether it be for like IGTV or YouTube or like this podcast, whatever the case might be, right? And it takes time to arrive there, but that's like really intentional. And when you're doing something like reviewing your form via video, you don't have to say shit, you just move, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, even that, I don't understand why there's that like really resistant, because you're not talking, you're not trying to teach, you're not trying to do anything. You just want to pay attention to how you're moving and recognize if you're doing it properly, if you're not doing properly, and if you're not doing properly, how am I going to address those things? Right? But for whatever reason, it never fails. Like for months, you guys record yourselves, you guys record yourselves, you guys record yourselves. And then finally someone's like, so I recorded myself the other day and what do you know? You were right. I keep doing this thing. It's like, oh, you think? Like, it's not, yeah, mirrors are great if you've got it propped up right in front of you and you're not doing something that takes your attention away from that, right? That you have to
Yeah.
focus on instead. But that still doesn't tell you the whole story because you're in it. Like
Yeah.
you're in it, you're doing the work. Your brain should be here, right? And not over there anyway. And so when you're recording, you can ignore that camera and you can do it as best as you think you can. And then when you review the video, right, your brain was where it was supposed to be while you're moving. Now your brain can be on the video when you're watching it, and it is a powerful thing. But it's like, here's a tool that everyone has this tool in their pocket to use. Why are we not making use of that?
Yeah, and it's like such a powerful thing. It's the same thing. Like our subconscious reacts the same way to being like to recording ourselves as it does to being with the coach. And like I noticed, like I even noticed that for myself, right? Like I can go through and like I will do a number of reps. I will rep out my flow multiple times before I even turn on my camera to record. But without fail, like I've been doing this for over a year, and without fail, every single freaking time, the first one, maybe two rounds of the flow on the recording, I'm going, oh crap, this was off. Oh crap, this was off. And I'm catching myself as I'm recording. And I could progressively see myself stopping what I was doing for the next round. It's like
Mhm.
we don't necessarily always have to review it. Sometimes just knowing that there's an eye on you, you'll catch yourself with a lot more things than you normally would. And it's actually entertaining to go back through your own videos and see how you make those progressions for yourself and understand more about how your mind works and why we operate the way that we do. Because at the end of the day, like use like a baseball analogy, right? Like you're on the field for maybe for a few minutes at a time, like nothing special. Any sport really, you're on the field for a few minutes at a time. And that is what it is. The other 90% of your time in the sport, you're reviewing the game footage to see what you were actually doing versus how you perceived what you were doing. You're getting those reps in over and over and over again. Like basketball, you're practicing that slam dunk over and over and like relentlessly, nonstop, over and over and over again, right? Bicep curls, ballistic curls with a steel mace. That not many people are going to be able to relate to that. Bicep curls, right? You up your weight, and if we're not careful, we still catch ourselves doing those little hip twitches or those little hip leans to try and putting pressure on our core unnecessarily to try and make up for that extra little bit of weight that we just added on. And like it's the fundamentals are never going to go away because what we do is never going to be stronger than the base form.
Mhm.
That's it. And it doesn't matter what, like whatever we do is going to impact our ability to do something else. Push-ups absolutely help when it comes to handstands and certain other exercises. um yeah, I can't use, I could use animal flow analogies, but I'll try and stick with stuff that people are familiar with so it doesn't get lost in translation. And even the
Yeah,
maces, as much as I love the mace and talking about the mace or the hydrocore, not really many people work out like we do, so it's harder to conceptualize
Mhm.
what we're talking about.
Right. I think you made a really good point about like, repeatedly doing like the bicep curl and like how we tend to even catch ourselves doing that thing. Um, in catching yourself, the only reason why you would catch yourself doing it is if you practiced enough with good form to have the good form locked in so that you could recognize when you weren't doing it properly, right? And the only
Mhm.
way that happens is if you train consistently in such a way that you are always doing the basic shit that you need to be doing, right? So like you fall back to the level of your training. So no matter
Yeah.
what happens, how exhausted you get in a workout, right? Whatever you've automated for yourself, that's what's going to come out when this is no longer engaged as much as it should be. And that becomes problematic if you've never bothered to automate your body in a way is that does things properly. That's a big deal. We have to be willing to do the push-ups. You have to be willing to do the pull-ups. You have to be willing to do the bicep curls uh, consistently, always the same way, starting out light enough so that you can control it, gradually moving up so you can control it to the point where when you want to start pushing it, yeah, you can recognize it. And that's really powerful if you go about it in that way.
That is, yeah, that's so key. I'm trying to, you reminded me of something. I can't remember what it is, but the stages of learning, right? The four stages of learning and the steps through competency towards things becoming unconsciously competent. I mean, I'll have to go give myself a refresher on that because that's a key component. But the analogy I can use that pretty much, I'm pretty sure that at least 90% of our listeners are going to understand is driving a car, right? Remember when you were first learning how to drive, you had to think about every single little detail, right? That's not your windshield wiper, that's your blinker. That's not your blinker, your windshield wiper's just turned on, right? Which one's the gas pedal? Which one's this? Like how to position your eyes on the horizon so you stay within the lanes. All of these little details that when we're first learning how to drive, everything is super conscious. And we have to really, like, we can't break our focus from this whole checklist of things that we got to do, mirror, signal, solo shoulder check. I have my driving instructor was an ex-police officer, and that he beat that one into me like no tomorrow. Mirror, signal, shoulder check. And it took me forever just to get that straight. um like, and then eventually over time, like 2-3 years down the road, After we've been driving, we don't even think about it anymore. We just intuitively, we just know. And unless we like, our fitness is the same thing. We need to get to that point where we just intuitively know. Because without that proper form, we're not going to have that self-awareness. Without that self-awareness, we are exposing ourselves to risk of injury and any number of things that could be fatal, could not be fatal. Right? I'm sure they're few and far between, but I'm sure there have been gym fatalities from people doing stupid stuff, like trying to squat 4 times their body weight and snapping their back or some shit like that, right? Like,
Right.
it's all the same, and it doesn't matter who we are as a human being. We don't have to look at health and fitness. We can look at learning how to drive a car. We can look at learning how to ride a bicycle. I don't like using that analogy because some people have family issues and it can be very triggering and unsettling for them. But like anything like that, like learning a sport, we've done it hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times in our lifetime. Like, what's one more thing? What's learning how to work out and move your body properly? You've demonstrated for 20, 30, 50 plus years of your life that you can do it over and over again. You just need to apply those same skills and be willing to focus on those basics and those fundamentals. And if you're struggling to get that focus, and if you have a lot of resistance and a very hard time to really drilling those basics and trying to learn that, I would highly suggest that you need to fire whoever you have hired and go find either a coach or a discipline that you actually enjoy doing. Right? If it's something that you enjoy doing and that you have fun doing, you could spend all day long practicing the same things over and over again, and it's not going to trigger you. It's not going to bore you. You have a strong, compelling why, and you have the right mindset towards wanting to learn it. If you're just mentally masturbating yourself off in the gym because somebody told you you need a gym in order to be healthy, you're not even giving yourself the permission to get to the lifestyle or the health that you want to have. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I see it all the time. Little roaming packs of people throughout the gym, not really sure about what they're doing. They kind of land in like a set of machines that they might work over, and then someone gets bored and they move on to the next thing. And so there's no real direction, no real, and it's on the one hand, it's like, all right, you're here. So there's that desire to want to do better for yourself. But on the other hand, it's like, that's kind of where it ends. And there's no effort to figure out what you could be doing, and coming back to this idea of specialities, like specializing, that's what we're here for, right? People like you and I are here to help people like those who don't know what they're doing and don't have the bandwidth to figure it out, right? So you don't have to, because like we've done the legwork, we've done the studying, we have the experience, and we're here for that. So you don't have to mindlessly go around looking for something to do to like get better because someone told you that this is what you're supposed to do and you're lost. Like you could say, okay, I want to move better. I just have to find the right person to set myself up with, who's knowledgeable and within my price range and has the availability I need to be able to do what it is that I want to do and get there. And
finding a discipline is key. Like me, I would never set foot in a gym. I would be the person if you threw me in a gym, I would be the person you just explained. I would be wandering around aimlessly talking to people because I wouldn't know what else to do with myself. And I'd like, okay, I'll just rep something out to look like I'm being productive on a machine and walk away. I'm like, it does not interest me at all to put the time and the effort in to go to a gym and isolate my muscle groups because I'm a functional person. So that's why I do like flows or street workouts or whatever, or swing a mace, because I actually have fun doing that. I can do, like, you asked me to do some bicep curls with a dumbbell. No, you asked me to do ballistic curls with a steel mace, which is pretty much the exact same thing. I could do it. I'll do it all day long. I'll have the time of my life doing it. Right? It's just, you gotta find those pieces that work for you. And somebody who has those, like Nonsense said, somebody who has those pieces, so you're not going through the struggle and the headaches to try and put it together yourself. I think I cut you
Absolutely.
off there though. Sorry.
No, I think I was already done.
Okay, I couldn't tell. You
Yeah.
kind of went to, I started talking the same second you opened up your mouth. I was like, okay, I'm already talking. We'll just keep going.
No, that's quite all right. No, I don't think I was already completed with the idea. So but yeah, I guess, bringing this back to the idea of like always working on the basics. This is, it's like the foundational work, the fundamentals, the basics. These are things that don't take much to learn how to do properly. And if it's a matter of bandwidth, if it's a matter of money, if it's a matter of time, um, it doesn't take long to read up on what your shoulders are supposed to be doing in a push-up, what your body's supposed to look like in a push-up, what your body's supposed to look like in a pull-up, what your body's supposed to look like in a squat. Fundamental movements like this. Yeah, if you want to pick up the steel mace and you want to start rolling with that, that is a much higher level of effort that's going to be involved in learning how to do it properly, right? But fundamental stuff that will allow you to build up to doing animal flow, mace work, all these other like more, I guess, advanced kind of modalities, like you can do that. You can do the push-ups and you can do the squats and you can learn how to do them properly. And maybe you can carve out enough cash to bring or enough DAI, right? Enough USDC to to bring a trainer on for at least 1 or 2 sessions to get feedback on what everything looks like. Because that's going to be way more valuable to you in the long run than just kind of showing up and mindlessly floating around at the gym and not really knowing what you're doing just because you feel like that's what you're supposed to be doing. So the basics are not just, hey, here's something that like you could work on to build up to this. And the basics are not just like, oh, here's something that you could be doing instead of that, but rather these are things that you should be doing anyway, no matter what. Something falls on the ground, you squat to pick it up, you don't lean over, right? Like if more
We're
push-ups you
always,
can do, the stronger your back is, the better supported your spine is. And I don't think a lot of people like recognize the benefit to upper body strength over and above doing some of the crazy shit like handstands or arm balances or, that kind of thing. Getting
yeah,
yoked.
that's our life. We push and we pull. And sometimes we push and we pull overhead. You gotta sorry, short people, but we all gotta reach the top shelf sometime, right? We all gotta lift that stuff up. Like, you made a few good points there. I wouldn't necessarily call like animal flow and stuff advanced. Anybody can learn a lot of that stuff. I just wouldn't recommend it for I don't know how else to put it, but severe weight loss. Like if you've got obesity issues, chances are animal flow is not going to be a very good call for you. It's going to take a substantial amount of time to lose the weight in order to be able to hold yourself up the way that you need to. There's more appropriate disciplines and use cases. But like, yeah, it's it's still, even with animal flow, we're pushing, we're not necessarily pulling, but it's a lot of pushing, and you really have to push to hold yourself up the same way you would in a handstand or a tuck balance. Any weight, like whether it's a steel mace, a steel club, a dumbbell, a barbell, you're still push-ups, pull-ups, squats. Overhead press is, in a sense, a variation of an overhead press, right? Like it's pretty much all the same. I get a laugh out of it in the on it world, because I'm always in their tribe and I'm always chatting them up. I love their community and what they've done. And one of the first thing people notice is all of their On-It-6 programs are like, they're pretty much the same. You've done one or two of them, you feel like you've done all six. Is like, it doesn't matter the tool that you're using, the movement patterns don't change. You're squatting, you're lunging, you're pushing, you're pulling, and it doesn't matter what tool you're using. There's a very limited amount of ways that there's a very limited amount of adaptations that you can use, right? You're still doing that exact same base movement. You're commando pull-up versus an archer pull-up, right? Archer pull-up, you're pretty much working towards a one-arm pull-up at that rate. Same with push-ups, right? Archer push-ups are pretty much a step towards doing a one-arm push-up. Like you're not changing much. You're just changing the format in which you're doing it. But the form and the fundamental is still going to be the same.
Absolutely. All of it just comes back to the fundamentals.
Get back to the basics and face it. Yeah, yeah, it's important. It's like anything. Even in a business context, I've talked to like business coaches and stuff. How can I write better? How can I communicate better? How can I, whatever area I'm struggling with? I get the same answer from pretty much everybody every single time. Do it more. Like, you just gotta do it more and get the reps in. You just gotta practice doing it right. And eventually you're not going to be thinking about it anymore. You're just going to be doing it right. But unless you give yourself the permission to get those reps in, it's not going to happen. And then you're not going to progress to that more advanced, cool looking stuff that you want to do. I show, like in Animal Flow, I show all the cool stuff that I do. I'm still really only working on basic level 1 moves. I don't do much of like the level 2, level 3 and more advanced moves. Just because I want to work on the level that my people have, right? So I'm constantly building those level 1 things. But people see that in the flow and all the crazy cool stuff. They come into class and it's like, how to set a static beast, how to do a traveling beast, how to set a static crab, how to do a travel crab. And we're starting at those basics and drilling it in over and over before we even get to the flow, because if you don't know the basics, you're not going to move properly and you're going to hurt yourself. Same thing as recovery days. Like, I'm guilty of it too. I feel guilty and like crap for taking recovery days because I want to make progress towards my goals. I have an achiever, go-getter personality. I constantly need to be working towards stuff. And taking those rest days is hard for me, but that is fundamental because it's in those rest days where the true growth happens. If you think about it, most of us, especially you developers out there listening to this, that 30, 60 minutes a day or every other day that you work out totally gets thrown out the window because you're sitting hunched over a computer the extra 12 plus hours of your day. It has very minimal benefit, but it's that time that we spend recovering, that time we spend relaxing, where our body can focus on building up the muscle that we need in order to do it better next time. That our body can focus on what it needs to focus on to help us get to that point. Like the smallest sliver of what we do is actually done in training. The real benefits don't happen until after. And we also need to that's one foundation that we all neglect, and one strong foundation that we all need to do better at is commitments and priorities, to be able to take the step back and focus on the rest and the recovery and what our body needs to do in order to help us accomplish our goals, because that is just as important as what we do in the training room and dialing in those fundamentals so we can just be that 1% better next time. We don't have to get it perfect out of the gate. We just got to do that 1% better. The apes are a good one, whether it's a static ape or a traveling ape. An animal flow, because you're basically in a deep squat. I would say over 80% of my clients cannot do a deep squat. They're maybe like, here's their legs. They maybe get down this low, like that's as high as they can go. Maybe some of them, when they start out with me, they can act like maybe they're sitting in a chair. And that's where you are. That's where you are. Cool. We'll go with that. Because over time, as you focus on those key points, you're going to get into a deeper and deeper squat. Doing a crab position. A crab reach is pretty much a variation of a table, right? Or a bridge. If you can't do a 3-point bridge, if you can't get your hips up and you still got that curve to you, that practice, that repetition, your hips will start opening up so you can lift higher and higher to hit that 3-point bridge so that you can safely extend your arm over and do that cool stuff. Without focusing on the fundamentals, you're not even giving yourself the time, the space, or the permission to get that good, to be able to do it. And it shows, like even in my classes, the people who show up to class once a week and don't practice anymore outside of that, they're still in this, they're almost in this, it takes them 3 or 4 times as long to get where they want to be. And you can spot that a million miles away. Whereas the people who come to class and practice outside of class diligently, whether it's working it into their warm-ups or their cool downs or whatever, you can see the next time they come into class, it's like, oh yeah, you're definitely practicing, because you're getting that little bit lower or that little bit higher, or your knees are that much, but like it's not hard to tell. And it's night and day between who actually gives themselves that permission. This is the thing, it really, at the end of the day, focusing on the fundamentals comes down to giving ourselves permission. We don't give ourselves permission because we just want to jump from A to Z. We need to give ourselves permission to go through the process and take those steps and take that learning curve. Like, what would have happened if you just drove behind the wheel without knowing how to drive, right? Everything we've done in life has taken some sort of step, some sort of a progression. This is exactly the same. Business is exactly the same. Learning how to write is exactly the same. Learning how to communicate, it's all the same.
It's giving yourself the permission to not just go through the process, but learn to fall in love with the process. Because at the end of the day, even when you do get into more advanced movement or you feel better about the way you move, there's still that upkeep. You still have to do the basic stuff. And it's harder to get into that space if you don't enjoy it already.
Yeah. That's why I'm always beating that point, always. And it's not just when it comes to health and fitness. Like when people come to me about like mindset coaching, career advice, personal life advice, it doesn't matter. My answer is almost always the same. And it almost always revolves around empowering them to find something that they enjoy doing. And if you have no passion, if you have no desire, it's not going to work. Like, there's a difference between having the desire to get where you want to go and having a desire to go through the process to get there. Right? Like Nonsense said, if you don't have the desire to go through the process, you're not going to find that benchmark at the end. It's going to run away from you faster than you can chase it.
Yeah, your work's not going to be up to par. you'll be completely disengaged. And when you're disengaged from the work that you should be doing, that's how injuries happen. That's how accidents happen. That's how bad habits get formed. And then you have to overcome all of that if you actually do want to move forward with your plans and try to arrive at your goals, which means that you end up setting yourself back and having to start not from where you started, but from behind the starting line. You come to a place where you can appreciate, and over and above appreciating and accepting that you have to do the work, but learning to enjoy the work itself becomes golden in terms of where you can go. It becomes a slingshot.
Yeah, that's a powerful point. And that opens up a whole other can of worms that we don't have time to get into today. This is the other side of that coin is that people will do the work, they will do the time. Sometimes they take shortcuts and fall into the fads and the hacks, and they get where they want to be, and then they think that's it, and that's the end of it, and then they just stop. And then next thing you know, a couple of weeks down the line, they've already passed where they started and they're farther behind because they just let themselves go. They spent too many times celebrating who, yeah, I did it, to actually keep going. And that ties right back to what you said, Nonsense, at the beginning of the episode here, is that we spend 99% of our time in life is spent in the journey. It's spent traveling. The amount of time that we actually spend at our goals or our benchmarks or whatever you want to call them is minimal. And most people think that just because they got the benchmark that they can let their foot off the gas and whatever. And it's like that old, pretty much any business coach that you talk to will tell you that success is never owned. Your rent is due every single day. Right? Great. You got your promotion at work. What are you doing to keep it? Right? You're going to be fired pretty quick. And a lot of places, I don't know, it's been a long time since I've been an employee, but I think a lot of people, I think a lot of businesses where if you get a promotion, your 3-month probation starts all over again. So yeah, I got this promotion. Let's take our foot off the gas. Oh, guess what? You just got let go. It's the same thing. You put in all this effort to gain that muscle or lose that weight or do whatever. You take your foot off the gas. Now you're staring at where you used to be before you even got started, wondering how did this happen? Cut that shit out. That's really all I got. Otherwise, I'm going to start rambling.
I just want to make one more point, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
My own practice, I don't do arm balances every day. I don't do handstands every day. I don't do any. I rarely do that, as a matter of fact. I'll find time to play around, but my workouts generally, I'm flipping tires around. I'm doing jump squats. I'm lifting heavy on the squat rack. I'm throwing kettlebells around. And it's very focused and intentional work. I'm working on snatches and presses. I'm working on push-ups. I'm working on pull-ups. I'm working on walking lunges with weight, walking lunges without weight, walking lunges with balance work, right? But everything I do 90% of the time is very focused on just this maintaining and strengthening, so that when I do decide, hey, I want to work on some arm balances and handstands, I can. And I can focus on the more technical aspects of that, as opposed to me freaking out about something not feeling right if I'm doing something wrong.
That's so key. And yeah, you can see that. I've got recordings upon recordings publicly available on social media, myself going through that too. You'll see when I first started learning animal flow and getting heavier into it, I could not do a scorpion. It just was totally beyond me. And it's basically, if you know yoga, it's not much different than a 3-legged down dog, right? It's just the tension points are a little bit different. But I pretty much looked like I was in a tabletop position with my leg just kicking my butt right behind me, right? And now in my other videos, you can see I'm still not quite vertical. I still have I have a lot of tightness through my back and through my posterior chain and my hips. So you can still see my back, especially my lower back, rounding out in that pose. But I would have never gotten to that point if I hadn't have spent a year or more making myself super angry because I haven't been able to hit it yet. I'm like, this is one of my most fun things. I love doing this, but I am horrible at it. And yeah, it just comes right back full circle again. And it's really cool. Like, you don't have to be as ballsy as us and record yourself almost every day and put it online or whatever. You can keep it for you, or you just do it once in a while, do it periodically, once a month at least, maybe 2 times a month, whatever. But it is very as awkward and yeah, as awkward and icky as it is to kind of watch ourselves sometimes. It is so motivating to see yourself go through. Take it from me, I know from firsthand experience, to see those progressions and see those micro improvements over time. It's key, and it's important for us as coaches to be able to have the humility to step up and own that about ourselves, because we're not perfect either. We have the same struggles, we have the same ups, we have the same downs. We're just like you. We laugh, we cry, we bleed, we eat, we sleep, we poop. There's no difference. Fundamentally, we're all the same. It's just our biases and our minds is where we start having those differentiators throughout our lives. It's never going to happen without the fundamentals.
Mhm.
Cool, guys. Yeah, we're at time or a little bit over time. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I'm going to kill the recording. Don't forget to smash that like button. Hopefully I got my audio stuff sorted out. Guys, do not feel bad about reaching out to me to tell me that you could not hear me. Several of you guys have done it, and I appreciate it, because I will not go back through these things and listen to myself. I can watch myself on camera when I'm not talking. It's just weird to see me. I don't watch my own stuff. I'm once and done when it comes to this stuff. So I appreciate all the feedback. Don't forget to smash that like button. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it, and we will catch you next week on the next episode. Cheers.